Oh, alright, yeah, I turned on the camera. Anyway, yeah, I thought I'd make a follow-up video to yesterday's video. Just because I didn't really explain the democracy thing, the subtle little changes you make to fix it all. And so I just thought I'd do that real quick, even though I do have a channel, IR Voting, I think it is. Well, anyway, I'll post a link where I explain this democracy thing, the geographic bias and the how the instant runoff voting combined with getting rid of the geographic voting districts and having a all affirmative vote Congress or even all legislative bodies should be elected that way, so nobody loses the election for Congress. It's really, we don't have to have winner take all elections. That's just a really bad idea. That should only be for executives, not for legislative bodies, which are supposed to be representative bodies. That's why you have all those members, is because the idea is to represent the entire spectrum of perspective. And so instead of representing our ideology, we end up representing our geography, because 250 years ago, geography was everything. And obviously geography isn't everything now. We're not segregated philosophically like we were 250 years ago, so it really just doesn't work. And it's a really easy fix, and with computer technology you can make it really, really good, and we should do that. So I mean, yeah, the idea is to get rid of first the spoiler effect that happens in two-party races where, say, you have two liberal candidates and only one conservative candidate running in a race. Theoretically, the conservative candidate can win because the two liberal candidates split their voting bloc. It's the Ralph Nader effect where, yes, he got George Bush elected. It's just the truth. And, because he was a spoiler. And this is always the thing, because and then many people would have voted for Ralph Nader if they thought he could have won. So if he was a viable candidate instead of a non-viable candidate, if people could vote for him without worrying that that was essentially voting for George Bush, and so if you had a ranked voting system, you could vote Ralph Nader and then whoever the other guy was, the inconvenient truth guy, Gore. You could vote Nader Gore, and that way if Nader doesn't have enough votes, then your vote goes to Gore. Gore wins, he's president of the United States, and we don't have the whole mess that we had. Anyway, we have some other mess, but it's not the same mess. So anyway, but that's how it works for executive elections, but it also can work for all these congressional elections. And more importantly, the Congress should be made up of, we have all these geographic districts, and all these geographic districts, all the minorities are essentially out of luck. So there could be 20 million, 25 million cigarette smokers in the country, and yet they don't have anybody representing them in Congress. There could be millions of people with disabilities, or millions of people with different conditions or circumstances, and their rights will never be represented because they're a minority in every state, because they're not segregated in one state. And it's just really easy to figure this out, that, I mean, we want to be represented, at least I do, passionately. I want to be represented for what I believe in, not for where I live. And I certainly don't want to be represented by somebody who is exactly the opposite of what I believe in, which this winner-take-all garbage creates. And so instant runoff voting and getting rid of the geographic system will just get rid of this idea that I am a geography, and that we're going to figure out what my ideology is based on where I live, which is just stupid. And again, having an affirmative system where your vote is migrated to the most viable person on your list, and if your list doesn't have a viable candidate on it, then the highest ranked person would basically pool their votes and give them to somebody who was viable. So you're at least voting for somebody whose judgment you trust in terms of migrating your vote to something or somebody who will be your representative in the end. But the point is that this idea of losing congressional elections is completely unnecessary. We all should be able to go vote and feel good about voting, because we're not going to lose. Except for something like president, where you sort of are required, somebody's got to lose. But presidents don't really have the power anyway. So the real game is in the Senate and the Congress, and that's where we should really fix this thing. So anyway, the democracy is just fundamentally flawed. Like I said, to bias your representation based on your geography is silly in the modern age. It's just absolutely, I mean, the world is getting this big. We are not where we live. We are what we believe in, and that should be represented. And it's not, and we can have it that way, and it doesn't take much of a change, but the two-party system isn't going to let it happen voluntarily. We're going to have to force them to accept it because they are the special interest parties. And they both, they know, the people who are glued to the parties are the people who know they're getting a cheat. They know that they have a minority of 20 or 30% of the people, and they're able to control the politics with that minority. So things like the teachers' unions and the religious kooks and the filthy rich all get to control our politics because they can generate enough numbers to essentially play spoiler to rational politics. And they force, fundamentally evil compromises. And those wouldn't be possible without the two-party system. So, yeah. And the whole idea, too, is just the very idea of having a Congress where everybody is, there should be more hostility. There should be more realization of our fundamental conflicts with each other, and the arguments should be real. We shouldn't have our vote compromised before we vote by the two-party system. The compromise should happen in the legislative body after the argument, not before we vote. I mean, that's just bullshit. To be compromised out of the discussion, before we even can cast a vote, by limiting the candidates we can vote for. It's just stupid. And so anyway, this is to me a non-brainer. There's no rational counter-argument, and it just doesn't happen because everybody's so resistant to change, and they're just naysayers and nitpickers, and I don't know. People are just fundamentally impossible. Even smart people can be incredibly stupid. Thunderfoot. Just fundamentally moronic. I mean, you can't, there's not even words for why the hell he's getting into this whole rape discussion, as if, to sit there and even imply that there's anything other than villains here, and that they're male. I mean, it's just stupid. We know who the bad guy in this story of rape is, and it's just silly to say that, the sensible thing for a woman to do is hide in her basement in the safe room. Yeah, that's the most rational way to deal with rape, is to run away, hide from the rapist. And for him not even to appreciate the simplest of things, the liberties he has, is just so freaking ignorant. And that those liberties, just like the idea of being able to take a walk in the woods, and that a woman's going to be judged as foolishly risk-taking because she went and had a nice walk in the woods by herself, and you're not allowed to do that if you're a woman, because you're asking for it. I mean, what a stupid, idiotic argument. So anyway, but yeah, this is, the human race, and I guess I shouldn't insult you when I'm trying to persuade you to do the right thing, but yeah, we really have to get some of these basic things fixed. Basic infrastructure has to work before you can even hope to be able to enlighten each other, or advance conversation, or do any of that stuff. We're going to be stuck in this redundancy and these stupid arguments forever until we create a system that kind of forces better than that. And you're not going to have that as long as you maintain archaic infrastructure made for a 17th century or 16th century man. So anyway, yeah, there's more in-depth explanation in the other videos. It's really not that complicated. It just has to do with applying a little bit of technology and recognizing that the old system is broken just because of the structure of the old world, and that if Thomas Jefferson was alive today, he would probably recognize that it would be so much better if we could represent people's ideology, and that the Congress should represent people's point of view, not who's a majority in a specific geographic district. So people just got to let go of these stupid, identifications with, what town you live in and what state you live in and all this. This is just such corrosive crap. Become a human being and forget about everything else. Anyway, it's enough for a video. And such strange times. Very strange times. For me, anyway. Yeah, I'm feeling it. I am feeling really Twilight Zoned. Anyway, till next time, and such, and so forth.